by the skin of their teeth. There it is.
0.71 points. That was the number that changed everything for Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara at the very top of the World Figure Skating Championships. On March 27, 2025, inside Boston's legendary TD Garden, Japan's beloved Riku Ryu pair made mistake after mistake during their free skate and somehow still refused to give up the throne. Their final margin over Germany's rising powerhouse duo, Minerva Fabian Hayes and Nikita Volodin, was just 0.71 points, one of the narrowest and most dramatic victories modern pair skating has ever seen. But the real story was never about the score. What happened that night in Boston became something far bigger than a championship result. It became the emotional turning point that would eventually lead to one of the greatest moments in Japanese figure skating history. 11 months later, at the Milano Cortina Olympics, the impossible would finally happen. But to understand that miracle, we first have to return to the night everything nearly fell apart. And honestly, one question still divides skating fans around the world. Did Riku and Ryuichi truly deserve that gold medal, or should Germany have one instead? Tonight, we're diving deep into the emotion, controversy, pressure, and heartbreak behind one of the most unforgettable battles pair skating has ever witnessed. Before we begin, though, there's something important you need to understand. The stage was Boston, Massachusetts, TD Garden, home of the NBA's Boston Celtics and one of America's most iconic sports arenas. From March 26 through March 30, 2025, the building hosted the ISU World Figure Skating Championships, the biggest annual competition in figure skating outside of the Olympics themselves. And 2 years earlier, in 2023, inside Saitama Super Arena in Japan, Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara had already made history. In front of their home crowd, they captured Japan's first-ever World Championship title in pair skating. Fans still remember Riku's tears, Ryuichi's stunned expression, and the overwhelming emotion of that victory. But greatness rarely comes without suffering. The 2 years that followed became a nightmare. Injuries kept piling up. Riku struggled physically. Ryuichi battled conditioning issues. Their momentum disappeared almost overnight. During the 2023-24 season, they finished behind Germany's Minerva Hayes and Nikita Volodin at Worlds and settled for silver. That was when the whispers began. Maybe the Riku Ryu era was over. Meanwhile, the German pair was rapidly becoming the new dominant force in international skating. Hayes and Volodin were nearly untouchable throughout the 2024-25 season. They won Skate America. They captured the Grand Prix final. By the time they arrived in Boston, most experts believed the world title already belonged to them. Then came the short program on March 26. Against all expectations, Miura and Kihara delivered a brilliant performance and scored 76.57 points, enough to take the lead heading into the free skate. But everyone understood the reality. That lead meant nothing if they made even a single major mistake in the free program. And almost every analyst predicted the same thing. Germany would come back and take the title. So what actually happened that night? March 27, 2025, Boston. TD Garden was packed with nearly 17,000 fans. The final group of pair skaters, the 6 best teams in the world, prepared backstage. And in an unusual twist, the final team scheduled to skate wasn't Germany. It was Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara. That matters more than most people realize. Being the final skaters means you're forced to watch every rival perform before your own turn arrives. You sit backstage staring at monitors, watching score after score appear, feeling the pressure grow heavier every minute. Mentally, it can destroy athletes before they even step onto the ice. One by one, the teams finished their performances. And then came Germany. Hayes and Volodin were magnificent, nearly flawless. Their triple twist was huge. Their side-by-side jumps were clean. Their throw jumps soared across the ice. Every element landed with confidence and precision. When the score appeared, the arena exploded. 146.59 in the free skate, the highest free skate score of the entire night. German fans embraced each other in tears. Coaches celebrated. The momentum inside the arena completely shifted, and backstage, Riku and Ryuichi watched all of it happen. I remember replaying the camera shots again and again afterward. Riku's face looked tense, almost frozen, because deep down they both understood the truth. Now they had to skate after perfection. And that, more than anything, became the true climax of the competition. Because human strength is tested most brutally in the exact moment after someone else delivers the performance of their life, and then your own name is suddenly called. Finally, the announcer introduced Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara. Their free skate music choice was Adios by British singer-songwriter Benjamin Clementine, a haunting piece about farewell, despair, and hope. And honestly, the title itself felt symbolic. Why would a team that spent 2 painful years fighting through injuries choose a program called Goodbye? To me, the answer was obvious. This wasn't a farewell to skating. It was a farewell to fear, to doubt, to the version of themselves that had suffered in silence for 2 straight years. The music began. The opening 30 seconds felt electric. Then came the triple twist. For anyone unfamiliar with pair skating, this is one of the sport's most dangerous elements. The male skater launches his partner high into the air while she rotates 3 times before being caught. Timing has to be absolutely perfect, but immediately something looked wrong. Riku under-rotated slightly. Her landing edge scraped hard across the ice. A deduction. The crowd gasped. Next came the side-by-side triple toe loops, one of the hardest synchronized elements in pair skating. Again, trouble. Riku's landing became tight and unstable, forcing her onto 2 feet. Another costly error. Then came the throw triple loop. Ryuichi launched her beautifully across the ice, but again, the landing wasn't clean. Another 2-foot landing. More lost points. At that moment, many commentators believed the gold medal race was over. Some broadcasters later admitted they were already mentally awarding the title to Germany. And honestly, they had good reason. Technically, Germany had been stronger that night. But then something extraordinary happened. As Adios reached its emotional climax, Miura and Kihara transformed the entire atmosphere inside TD Garden. The mistakes suddenly stopped mattering. The audience became completely absorbed in the emotion, the connection, the storytelling, the humanity of the performance. By the final pose, 17,000 people were on their feet, standing ovation. But Riku and Ryuichi weren't smiling, because they knew. They knew the mistakes might have cost them everything. Back at the kiss and cry, their coaches handed them water and tried to calm them down. Riku took a deep breath. Ryuichi stared silently forward with both hands resting on his knees. Then came the scores. And even before they appeared, commentators openly questioned whether the Japanese pair could stay ahead. Technically, Germany should still win. That was the expectation. But figure skating isn't judged on technique alone. There's another weapon. Program components score. The artistic side of skating, performance quality, interpretation, connection, composition, emotional impact. And in that category, Riku and Ryuichi were untouchable. The final score appeared. 219.79 points. The arena erupted. They had won the world title by just 0.71 points. Personally, I believe this was one of the most dramatic victories modern figure skating has ever seen. Because technically they probably should have lost, but emotionally, artistically, humanly, they reached a level that transcended raw execution. Commentators across the world struggled to process what they had just witnessed. English broadcasts, French broadcasts, German broadcasts, Italian broadcasts, Japanese broadcasts. Everyone reacted almost the same way. Shock. And in figure skating, that almost never happens. What stayed with me most wasn't the score. It wasn't the controversy. It wasn't even the standing ovation. It was Ryuichi Kihara's expression. He didn't scream. He didn't celebrate wildly. He simply turned slowly toward Riku and nodded deeply, almost as if he were silently saying thank you. That moment carried the weight of 2 years of pain. No words, no dramatic speech, just emotion communicated through a glance. A very Japanese kind of restraint. Quiet, controlled, but overwhelmingly powerful. Then Riku finally broke down in tears. And Ryuichi embraced her tightly. That was the true essence of pair skating. Achieving something impossible alone by trusting another person completely. Together, they reclaimed the World Championship title for the second time in their careers, and the world reacted immediately. NBC Sports described the victory as one of the narrowest championship wins in recent memory. CBC Sports focused on the resilience of the Japanese pair and the emotional journey behind the comeback. Across social media, fans argued passionately about whether artistry should outweigh technical mistakes. But maybe that debate is exactly what made this event unforgettable, because sports are not always about perfection. Sometimes they're about survival. Sometimes they're about refusing to break after years of suffering. And sometimes, the athletes who move us most are not the ones who skate flawlessly, but the ones who make us feel every ounce of their struggle. On that night in Boston, Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara were not perfect, but they were unforgettable. What Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara achieved in Boston would later be described as one of the hardest comebacks in modern figure skating history. British news giant Reuters placed the victory into an even bigger historical context. Out of Japan's 18 World Championship titles in figure skating, 16 had come from men's and women's singles skating. The remaining 2 both belonged to Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara. That means something incredible. In the entire history of Japanese pair skating, there have only ever been 2 skaters to win a world title, and they are Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara. No one before them. No one besides them. Japanese media immediately understood the magnitude of the moment. That very night, Asahi Shimbun released a breaking news alert announcing that Miura and Kihara had become 2-time world champions and rewritten another chapter of Japanese pair skating history. Sports Nippon chose a far more emotional headline: "The miracle comeback of Riku Ryu, the 0.71-point miracle." And honestly, that phrase spread across Japan like wildfire. By that point, the conversation was already shifting toward the 2026 Milano Cortina Olympics. Japanese broadcasters no longer viewed Riku Ryu as underdogs chasing history. They were now carrying the weight of Olympic expectations on their shoulders. NHK even placed the victory at the top of its 9 p.m. national news broadcast. The anchor spoke with unusual emotion. After 2 long and painful years, Miura and Kihara have returned to the top of the world. This victory carries enormous significance for Japan heading into next year's Milano Cortina Olympics. And that was the major difference between their first world title in 2023 and this one in 2025. The first victory had been celebrated as a dream fulfilled. This one was treated like the beginning of an Olympic destiny. But what made the story even more powerful was the reaction from the skaters themselves and the athletes around them. Germany's Minerva Hayes, despite the heartbreak of losing by only 0.71 points, showed remarkable sportsmanship during the medal ceremony. She calmly told reporters, "Of course we're disappointed, but we gave everything we had. A difference of 0.71 points is incredibly small, but that's figure skating." Honestly, moments like this reveal the true beauty of sports. To lose in such a painful way and still show respect toward your rivals takes enormous character. Italy's Sara Conti, who finished with the bronze medal, shared a similar feeling. "Watching the Japanese pair and the German pair battle tonight took our breath away. Honestly, both teams deserved gold." That sentence perfectly captured the atmosphere inside TD Garden, because even now, skating fans around the world still debate whether the final result was fair. During the press conference, Riku Miura reflected on the emotional journey behind the victory. "When we won our first world title in 2023, it was pure happiness. But these past 2 years were incredibly painful. There were injuries. There were times my body simply wouldn't move the way I wanted. So today feels completely different. This is a much deeper kind of achievement." Then came Ryuichi Kihara's answer. And honestly, it may have been the most emotional moment of the entire press conference. "When I watched Riku struggling with injuries, there were moments when I honestly thought our dream might be over, but we refused to give up. I believe this medal is the best possible answer to everything we suffered through during these 2 years." Back in Japan, social media exploded. On X, formerly Twitter, hashtags related to the championship dominated trending rankings all night long, but one phrase in particular became legendary among fans: the miracle of 0.71. It reportedly began from a single fan post before spreading across the entire country. Soon, fans were repeating it almost like a shared emotional code between people who had witnessed the same unforgettable moment. Many were already calling it the most beautiful chapter in the history of the Riku Ryu era. And then came one of the funniest and most unexpectedly viral reactions of all. A Japanese fan posted, "This was the kind of competition you had to watch in traditional Japanese seated posture." The phrase sounded ridiculous at first, but Japanese fans instantly understood the joke. It referred to sitting formally on the floor with knees together, hands resting on your thighs, and posture completely straight. The kind of intense, respectful position associated with traditional Japanese culture. In other words, the pressure of the event was so overwhelming that fans felt they had to sit properly and respectfully just to survive watching it. The post exploded online, earning tens of thousands of reposts. International fans even began jokingly using the phrase Japanese Seiza style whenever watching stressful figure skating events. But now we reach the truly controversial part of this story. Because if we analyze the competition purely from a technical perspective, Germany was probably better. And that is not simply personal opinion. It's supported directly by the official ISU score sheets. Hayes and Volodin earned 79.42 points in technical element score during the free skate. Miura and Kihara scored only 71.15. That's a difference of more than 8 points. In pair skating, that gap is enormous. So how did the Japanese pair still win overall? The answer lies in PCS program components score, the artistic side of figure skating, skating skills, transitions, performance, composition, interpretation. In PCS, Miura and Kihara scored 72.04 points, while the German pair received 67.08. That nearly 5-point advantage in artistry was enough to overcome the massive technical deficit. And this is where the debate becomes extremely complicated, because PCS is inherently subjective. Different judges can interpret artistry differently. Emotional connection cannot be measured as cleanly as jump rotations or edge calls. German media immediately began questioning the scoring. How could a pair with multiple visible mistakes receive nearly 5 more PCS points than a pair that skated almost flawlessly? It's a fair question. And honestly, figure skating has struggled with this exact controversy for decades. In many ways, this situation mirrored one of the most famous Olympic debates ever. At the 2014 Sochi Olympics, Yuzuru Hanyu won Olympic gold despite mistakes in the free skate because his overwhelming short program lead and extraordinary component scores carried him ahead overall. To me, the structure of that victory and Riku Ryu's 2025 Worlds victory are surprisingly similar. Both victories suggest the same underlying philosophy of figure skating. Technical perfection matters, but total beauty matters too. And historically, Japan has built much of its skating identity around that balance. A blend of technical precision and emotional depth, a style deeply connected to broader Japanese artistic traditions, where expression and spirit often carry equal importance alongside pure execution. But from Germany's perspective, the pain was absolutely understandable. Nikita Volodin's journey alone could have been a movie. Originally from Russia, he lost international opportunities due to geopolitical restrictions, transferred to Germany, adapted to a new culture, a new language, and a completely new skating system, then rose to world-class level within only a few years. Minerva Hayes had her own difficult path. After her previous partnership ended, her career nearly collapsed before rebuilding everything from the ground up alongside Volodin. Together, they created one of the fastest rising pair teams the sport has ever seen. And after all of that effort, they lost by 0.71 points. So was the result fair? Honestly, I don't think there's an easy answer, because figure skating has always carried a fundamental contradiction inside it. It tries to convert two completely different things, athletic technique and emotional artistry, into one single number. And that process will probably always create controversy. There's also another uncomfortable reality many skating experts quietly acknowledge. Reputation matters. In the skating world, some insiders even refer to it as reputation scoring. Established champions often receive slightly more generous PCS evaluations than newer teams because judges subconsciously trust proven champions more. At the time of Boston 2025, Hayes and Volodin had only been together for a relatively short period. Meanwhile, Miura and Kihara were already former world champions with years of international reputation behind them. Did that influence the judges, even slightly? Maybe. And that possibility alone keeps this debate alive even today. But personally, I believe the deeper issue is not the athletes themselves. It's the scoring system, because neither pair did anything wrong. Germany delivered technical excellence. Japan delivered emotional brilliance. And figure skating forced judges to decide which form of greatness mattered more that night. Personally, I don't believe the real problem was the judges themselves. The judges did what they believed was right. Miura and Kihara delivered the best performance they could that night. Hayes and Volodin did the same. The deeper issue lies within the scoring system itself. Pair skating still struggles with a structural problem that has never been fully solved. Because at the end of the day, figure skating asks judges to do something almost impossible. It asks them to measure athletic precision and emotional artistry using the same number. And no matter how advanced the system becomes, there will always be moments when that balance creates controversy. But there is one thing I can say with complete confidence. Both performances deserve to be remembered forever. Both the German pair and the Japanese pair created something historic in Boston. And as it turned out, that razor-thin victory would completely change the future of Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara forever. 11 months later, on February 16, 2026, the world arrived in Italy for the Milano Cortina Winter Olympics. The stage was set for the biggest competition of their lives. After the short program, however, disaster seemed close once again. Miura and Kihara were sitting only in 5th place. The gold medal favorites had fallen behind badly, trailing Hayes and Volodin by nearly 5 points. In pair skating, a 5-point gap at the Olympics is normally devastating, almost impossible to overcome. But the truth is, Boston had changed them. The 0.71 miracle had transformed the way they viewed pressure, mistakes, and fear itself. They were no longer the fragile pair struggling through injuries and doubt. Now they believed they could survive anything. Their free skate music that night was the soundtrack from Gladiator, composed by the legendary Hans Zimmer. A soundtrack filled with themes of warriors, sacrifice, pain, and triumph. Honestly, it felt like the perfect representation of their entire 2-year journey. Then the performance began. Triple twist, perfect. Side-by-side triple salchows, perfect. Throw triple jumps, perfect. Every mistake they had made in Boston, they erased on Olympic ice. Element after element, Miura and Kihara delivered the performance of their lives. The arena shook with emotion. And when Ryuichi lifted Riku high into the air during the final lift, I honestly found myself standing in front of the television without even realizing it. Goosebumps covered my arms. Then came the score announcement. A new world record in the pair free skate. For the first time in history, Japan had won an Olympic medal in pair skating. Riku burst into tears. Ryuichi screamed in pure emotion. The crowd inside the arena exploded. And in that exact moment, I finally understood something. The 0.71-point victory in Boston had never been luck. It was preparation. That painful, controversial, imperfect victory had become the stepping stone toward absolute perfection in Milano Cortina. Hayes and Volodin finished with the bronze medal. Georgia's Anastasia Midolkina and Luka Birulava claimed silver. And standing once again at the top of the world were Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara. Thank you everyone for staying with me through this long story. The 0.71-point miracle in Boston and the historic Olympic medal in Milano cannot be separated. They are connected forever. Because in Boston, Riku and Ryuichi learned something powerful. Even when you make mistakes, even when things fall apart, if you refuse to give up, the result can still change. And then in Milano, they proved something even greater. True greatness only exists when technique and artistry finally become one. Personally, I believe this story carries an important lesson far beyond figure skating. Modern society often traps people inside impossible standards of perfection. We become terrified of mistakes, terrified of failure, terrified of being imperfect. But Riku and Ryuichi were not perfect in Boston. They made mistakes again and again, and yet they still won. Why? Because they never abandoned the beauty inside imperfection. Honestly, I think that lesson applies to all of us. So let me ask you something. Have you ever experienced your own 0.71 miracle in life? A moment when everything seemed lost, but somehow things still worked out in the end? If you have, tell me your story in the comments below. I genuinely love to read it. And thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. On this channel, we'll continue exploring the emotional stories behind Japanese athletes who inspired the world on the biggest stages imaginable. If this video touched your heart even a little, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. And next time, we'll dive into another unforgettable legend from the Milano Cortina Olympics, the battle for gold in men's singles skating. Until then, I'll see you in the next video.